The story takes place during the Victorian era, in a small town in London, where there was a special orphanage managed by Amalia. One day, the sky suddenly roared with thunder. Everyone thought a storm was coming, but when they looked up, they saw a spaceship flying across the sky. Right after that, a blinding white light appeared, and sparkling particles of light fell from above. Those who absorbed these particles gained special powers. However, since the number of people with such powers was very small, and the townsfolk were unsure whether they might be dangerous to humanity, fear began to spread. Amalia was the first person to awaken her ability, so she and Revena turned the orphanage into a shelter for people with special powers. Amalia had the ability to foresee the future, and her partner Penance could see electric current. Penance invented many special tools. Thanks to that, they were able to search for and protect people with special powers. Their daily work was to find and protect these people. One day, they went to visit a poor family in town. On their way, they heard the news about an evil woman named Moratti. In fact, Moratti had been a mental patient, but while being escorted to a psychiatric hospital, she absorbed some of the mysterious light particles and gained special powers. She then escaped from control and began using her powers to kill people. However, what concerned Amalia more was the daughter of that family. The father believed his daughter Myrtle had been possessed by Satan because the girl often spoke incomprehensible words. Amalia discovered that Myrtle was a person with special abilities. She could speak all the languages in the world. Although she had never traveled far, when she spoke, she often mixed different languages, making it difficult for others to understand. Amalia persuaded Myrtle's parents to let them take her away. However, at that moment, fighting sounds came from Myrtle's room. Amalia hurried upstairs to check, but she was suddenly attacked by someone. However, she quickly counterattacked and defeated the enemy. Penance also brought her equipment to help. It turned out that Amalia had predicted this situation. After they defeated the two attackers, they discovered that there was another group of people waiting downstairs, including a masked man who was planning to lock Myrtle in a metal box. Fortunately, Amalia and Penance were able to get Myrtle into their carriage in time. The masked man chased after them, but when he opened the coachman's cloak, he discovered that it was just a robot. It turned out that Amalia had foreseen this scene, so she used a small car invented by Penance to escape. Meanwhile, high-ranking officials in London were discussing Moratti. She had posed a serious threat to society, so she needed to be dealt with immediately. During the discussion, they also mentioned Amalia's orphanage. The government had never publicly expressed its views on people with special abilities, and since most of them were women, Mason assumed that someone was trying to raise the social status of women with the aim of destroying the current social order. The appearance of women with special abilities was a challenge to male authority. No one opposed Mason's opinion, but they were also worried that this might shake their own power. At the subway construction site, a body was found that had been gnawed by rats to the point of being unrecognizable. Based on the clues at the scene, it was clear that the culprit was Moratti. However, with his years of experience, Inspector Mundy realized it was a murder and that someone might have intentionally framed Moratti. Mundy decided to question everyone present at the construction site, but he was stopped by the foreman, who said that doing so would affect the progress of the project. After Myrtle arrived at the orphanage, she met many other people with special abilities. Each person had their own unique power, and everyone lived peacefully together. After arranging everything for Myrtle, Amalia and the management discussed the reason for the attack. As the orphanage became more well-known, their enemies also increased, but they still did not know who the attackers were. Therefore, Amalia decided to ask Beggy, the leader of a gang. He was the one who held all the information in the area. If he could sell information about people with special abilities to Amalia, then he could also sell it to others. Surely, he knew who the masked man was. In addition, Amalia had been injured during the chase, so the doctor of the orphanage came to her room to treat her wounds. This doctor was one of the few men with special abilities, and his power was healing, but before coming to the orphanage, he had never revealed his ability. His special healing method could be misunderstood by the locals as witchcraft. At that moment, one of Revena's subordinates brought Amalia a ceremonial dress. It turned out that she was invited to watch an opera. Revena was the sponsor of the orphanage, and also the one who supported Amalia behind the scenes. Since Amalia had already foreseen the scene at the opera house, she knew that this performance had a special reason. To attend, she and Penance then set off together, but on the way, they were stopped by a group of carriages. The person who came was Beggy, the leader of the gang, and this was how he met his clients. Amalia went straight to the point. She wanted to know the origin of the attackers. However, the gang leader did not want to reveal anything unless he received a large sum of money. Amalia, being wealthy, agreed. The leader then left. When Amalia arrived at the opera house, many famous people in society had already gathered there. Tonight's opera was Forsted. Amalia tried to foresee what would happen next, but surprisingly, she could not see any image in her mind. Penance noticed Amalia's uneasiness and gently held her hand to comfort her. When Revena saw Amalia, she immediately came closer and introduced her younger brother, Augustus, to them. The opera performance quickly began. Amalia also gradually relaxed and watched the play. When the opera reached its climax, the character, Satan, appeared in a blaze of fire, astonishing the audience. It turned out that the actor had already had his throat cut. Moratti stepped out from behind the actor. She laughed loudly and said that she had killed the demon. Along with Moratti were her accomplices, who were also people with special abilities. They held machine guns and fired wildly at the audience. The crowd panicked and ran in all directions. Because it happened so suddenly, Amalia did not know what to do. At that moment, a melodious voice came from the side of the stage. All the people with special abilities suddenly calmed down after hearing the voice. Even some people whose abilities had not yet fully developed were transformed by the sound. Seeing the situation turning bad, Moratti quickly kidnapped the woman who was singing. Amalia jumped down from the stands and quickly chased after her. Young Master Hugo was hiding backstage with his lover. By chance, he saw Moratti leading the woman away. The pure beauty of the woman left a deep impression on him. When Amalia caught up with Moratti, the two immediately engaged in a fierce fight. Moratti's accomplices did not help her because they thought she would surely win, but soon, the sound of police sirens quickly sounded. Before Amalia could defeat her opponent, Moratti retreated with her accomplices. When Mundy arrived at the theater, he did not rush to investigate, but first went to meet Hugo. The two seemed to have a secret deal. Through their conversation, it was revealed that young Master Hugo had founded a club called Philemon. This club specialized in controlling girls with special abilities and forcing them to provide special services to the wealthy. Control was only a polite way to put it. In reality, those girls were kidnapped by Hugo. The ones who attacked Myrtle also seemed to be subordinates of Hugo and Mundy. The masked man was now tied to an experiment table by Dr. Tier. It turned out that the masked man was a puppet modified by Tier. He had modified both ordinary people and those with special abilities. If Myrtle fell into his hands, she would end up like the masked man. During the recent chaos, Penance lost track of Amalia. When Penance found her, Amalia was being harassed by two drunken men. Penance used a bit of her power to drive them away and quickly checked on Amalia's condition. Failing to defeat Moratti made Amalia very upset. She was determined to capture Moratti and rescue the woman with the mysterious voice, because that woman's singing could control the energy of people with special abilities. This would be very helpful for the orphanage. After that, the two regained their spirits. Not long after, a grocery store clerk named Cassini attracted everyone's attention. Cassini had just awakened her special ability. Everything she touched would float into the air. However, her power made those around her frightened, so Cassini was shunned by everyone. Later, she happened to see a flyer from the orphanage and decided to find Amalia for help. But the orphanage was also in trouble. The massacre caused by Moratti at the opera house had created panic in society. This increased the conflict between ordinary people and those with special abilities. Therefore, Inspector Mundy came to the orphanage early in the morning. He used the excuse of an inspection to damage their facilities. Amalia was very angry but had no reason to stop him. Mundy wanted to trick Amalia into revealing what had happened at the opera house that night. His goal was to find out more about the power of the woman with the mysterious voice. However, Amalia refused to cooperate. At that moment, the sponsor Revena arrived. Mundy did not dare to cause trouble with such a powerful tycoon, so in the end, he had to leave with a forced smile. Mundy's visit today was only the beginning. Surely, the orphanage would face more problems in the future. What they needed to do now was to prove that people with special abilities did not pose any threat to society. Revena suggested that Amalia let those with special abilities participate in the charity fair she organized. The purpose was to build a positive image for the orphanage and show everyone that her children were not monsters. While the orphanage was trying to deal with the aftermath, high-ranking officials wanted to take this opportunity to eliminate all people with special abilities. One of them said that the attack caused by Moratti had made the public fearful of those with special abilities. Lord Mason had always disliked such people, so he established a special committee to control and restrict mutants. Young Master Hugo was also present at the meeting. It turned out that Hugo's father had been an important political figure, but Hugo himself lacked ambition. His indulgent lifestyle annoyed Mason, yet Hugo even invited Mason to his club for entertainment. At the orphanage, everyone was busy selecting those with special abilities to take part in the charity fair. Some people's abilities were not suitable to show in public, so only those with moderate powers were chosen. The charity fair was held at Revena's mansion. People with special abilities wore special jewelry so that the guests could easily recognize them. Before the event began, Revena emphasized that they should use their powers only at a minimal level. The main purpose was to entertain the nobles. Her words sounded unpleasant, but perhaps she only wanted to protect those with special abilities. Meanwhile, a woman and her son came to visit Amalia. She was once a famous courtesan in the area, known as the Queen of Desire. But recently, she had been very troubled because she had become a person with special abilities. When others came near her, they could not help but speak out what was in their hearts. In the past, the men who had sought her did so mainly to satisfy their desires, but recently, because of the panic caused by Moratti, they became talkative. They constantly complained to her about their fears and worries. This gave her terrible headaches. Therefore, she brought her son to the orphanage to hide. Amalia doubted the woman's ability. Moreover, the police had just caused chaos at the orphanage, and this woman appeared at exactly the same time. Amalia could not help but suspect that she was Mundy's spy. Amalia said that she had discovered the woman's plot and criticized the police for not doing their job properly. Then, unable to control herself, she spoke out all her complaints and frustrations. At that moment, she realized that the woman had not lied. Indeed, in front of the woman, people could not help but speak their true feelings. Amalia immediately changed her attitude. She said that she could help the woman, but in return, the woman must also help the orphanage. After that, Amalia took the woman to the police station. She stormed into Mundy's office and suddenly slapped him. She demanded that he reveal the real reason for searching the orphanage. Under the influence of the woman's ability, Mundy indeed confessed that he had searched the orphanage to find the woman with the beautiful singing voice. It turned out that her name was Mary, and she was his fiancée. But not long before their wedding, Mary had suddenly disappeared. Knowing the truth, Amalia interrupted Mundy. She was not interested in his love story. However, when Amalia knew that he did not intend to harm Mary, she decided to temporarily cooperate with him. As long as the police did not act recklessly and did not use every means to capture Moratti, she would help him rescue Mary. Mundy took a bullet from his gun and threw it to Amalia. He said that if Mary died, he would use that bullet to kill her. At that time, Mary was being held by Moratti in an abandoned factory. There was also a girl named Clara. Clara said that she had tried to hurt herself to awaken her ability, but so far she had not seen any sign. Mary said that this meant Clara did not have any special power, but Clara still believed that she simply had not awakened it yet. On her way to the orphanage, Cassini met her close friend. The friend blamed Cassini for hiding the fact that she had an ability, saying that was why she could not protect Cassini. Cassini thought that she had finally found a safe place to stay, but soon after, the sound of police sirens was heard. At that moment, she realized she had been betrayed by her best friend. She ran to a dark blue door, which turned out to be the address of the orphanage. An old man came out and opened the door for Cassini, but when she went inside, she realized she had fallen into another trap. Meanwhile, Amalia did not go to the charity fair with everyone else because she still had to find Moratti. Penance led the people with special abilities to the fair. During the previous event at the theater, Augustus had developed feelings for Penance. When he saw her arrive, he immediately approached her to talk. Seeing Augustus and Penance chatting happily, Revena pulled Augustus aside. She warned him not to get too close to people with special abilities because their noble family could not accept mutants or those of low status. It turned out that Revena only helped people with special abilities to build her public image. She did not truly sympathize with them. She only wanted to use them. However, Revena did not know that Augustus was also someone with a special ability. During the previous theater event, his power had been awakened by Mary's singing voice, but Augustus had not figured out how to tell Revena about it. When he saw his sister's true attitude toward people with special abilities, he decided to keep this secret hidden. After being scolded by Revena, Augustus no longer dared to talk to Penance. He was afraid of causing trouble for both of them. Penance was disappointed. She quietly left the hall. Watching Penance's figure as she walked away, Augustus closed his eyes, and immediately the crow perched on the tree spread its wings and flew in Penance's direction. Augustus saw Penance leave through the eyes of the raven. This was his special ability. He could transfer his vision to birds. After Penance left, Augustus sadly took out the ticket Hugo had given him. He decided to go to Hugo's club to take a look. Meanwhile, as soon as Penance entered the city, she was stopped. At that moment, Cassini was tied to an experiment table by Dr. Tier. She was about to be transformed by him, but just then, one of his subordinates came in and said that their master was coming to inspect. Amalia used her power of foresight together with the devices Penance had created, and she was ready for a battle. However, she did not tell Mundy about this. Amalia and Moratti had an old score to settle. Then Amalia put on her sunglasses and rushed into the factory. She threw a flash grenade to disorient the enemies and then charged at Moratti with a series of punches and kicks. Moratti's face was covered in blood. blood. Amalia thought Moratti could no longer fight back, but suddenly Moratti attacked again. Perhaps this was her ability. The more she was injured, the stronger her attacks became. Amalia could not keep the battle going for long. However, Moratti did not intend to keep fighting either. She stopped at a critical moment. Mental torment was her most powerful weapon. Amalia looked up and saw Mary being hung high above by Moratti's men. Just one more step and Mary would fall to the ground. It turned out that Moratti and Amalia used to be close friends, but Amalia had abandoned Moratti for personal reasons. At that time, Moratti had lived a very difficult life. Since then, hatred had grown in her heart. Now she tortured Amalia to take revenge, but Moratti had become so insane that Amalia could no longer recognize who she was. Moratti handed Amalia a gun. The curtain opposite Mary was pulled open, and to everyone's surprise, Penance was hanging there. It turned out that the person who had stopped Penance earlier was actually Moratti's subordinate. At that moment, Moratti ordered Amalia to shoot one of the two. If she killed one, the other would live. The choice of saving her new friend or her old friend was completely up to Amalia. Amalia picked up the gun. It seemed that she had made her decision. Suddenly, Amalia pointed the gun at herself and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Moratti did not expect Amalia to do that. She quickly ran to check Amalia's condition, but Amalia unexpectedly shot her. When Moratti tried to attack Amalia again, one of her own subordinates suddenly used fire to save Amalia's life. Perhaps the fire girl was moved by Amalia's courage. At that moment, Mundy also arrived with reinforcements, and Moratti was forced to retreat once again. Mary and Penance were both rescued. Amalia's wounds were healed by the doctor at the orphanage. This crisis also made Amalia and Penance cherish each other more. Mary also explained the misunderstanding with Mundy. She hadn't disappeared suddenly to run away, but because she had discovered her own ability, she was afraid that Mundy would be hurt. Everything seemed to be getting better. Just then, Tyr went to an underground mining site to meet his master. When the elevator door opened, Revena stepped out. It turned out that she was Tyr's master. The experiments to modify both normal humans and those with special abilities were all carried out under her orders. The orphanage was just a perfect place for her to hide her crimes. The underground mining site was extracting a huge energy sphere. Everyone working there had already been modified, including Cassini, who had accidentally entered their base. In another situation, the fire girl no longer lived with Moratti. She broke into Beggy's gang warehouse and used her power to rob their storage. She declared that from now on, the place would become her own base. At that moment, the leader was not present, so his subordinates were terrified and ran away in panic. Unexpectedly, Amalia and Penance also arrived. The fire extinguisher made by Penance suppressed the power of the fire girl. However, their purpose was not to defeat her. Amalia wanted to invite her to join the orphanage. The fire girl could not decide right away. She said she would give Amalia an answer after thinking carefully. Meanwhile, Mary had joined the orphanage for some time. Everyone with special abilities loved her because she had a beautiful voice and a gentle personality. Since Penance wanted Mary's singing to awaken more people with special powers, she started to research new technology. It was the design of a giant speaker that could transmit Mary's singing throughout the entire city. That way, more people would awaken their powers and join them. On the other hand, Hugo was also looking for people with special abilities. His club needed more people with powers to provide special services for the nobles. Hugo even offered attractive salaries to persuade those with abilities to join willingly. Last time, Augustus only had gone there to take a look, but he had been accidentally convinced by Hugo to become his partner. Meanwhile, Mason was busy attending a high-level meeting. His carriage passed by a cemetery where his wife and daughter were buried. 3 years ago, Mason's daughter had also absorbed special light particles, but she later died. This was the reason why Mason hated people with special powers. If those powers had not existed, his daughter would not have left him. Recently, Mason's mansion was being renovated. A worker secretly explored the place while the owner was away and discovered a hidden branked dungeon beneath the mansion. Fortunately, the housekeeper appeared in time and quickly drove the worker away. On the other side, several members of Beggy's gang found their leader and reported that the warehouse had been burned down. They said that after the fire girl attacked the warehouse, they also saw Amalia and Penance there. A big misunderstanding occurred. The leader believed that the two women and the fire girl were on the same side. He thought that because Amalia had not received the information she wanted, she had ordered someone to destroy his base. Feeling disrespected, the leader decided to take revenge. Elsewhere, Mundy received a note and went to the address written on it to meet the person who had invited him. When he arrived, he realized that the person who had called him there was Hugo. It turned out that Hugo was bisexual. The last time at the theater, the two had acted strangely because they once had a brief relationship. It was surprising that a serious person like Mundy had been involved in such a relationship. However, this time, Hugo did not invite invite him to talk about their past feelings. He wanted to find out whether Mundy had discovered any information about Mary, because his club was in great need of a new member. Nulls. He guessed that Mary must have a very special power, since Amalia had fought Moratti to chase after Mary last time. After that, Mundy went to the orphanage. In fact, he only wanted to see how Mary was living. Although there was no love between them, they were very close friends. He did not want to push Mary into danger. Seeing that Mary was happy at the orphanage, Mundy felt relieved. Recently, Amalia discovered several flyers printed with the orphanage's name but showing a different address. She decided to take people there to investigate. When Amalia broke into the fake orphanage, she found that the person inside was the masked man who had kidnapped Myrtle. To find out his true identity, this time Amalia removed his mask and discovered that the face underneath was so deformed that it no longer looked human. Amalia smashed the masked man's head. This attack was not in vain. After defeating the masked man, Amalia caught his companion. It was a blonde girl, but the information she could provide was limited. Besides knowing that Dr. Tier was capturing people with special powers for experiments, she knew nothing else. Amalia reported this discovery to Revena. She hoped that Revena could investigate what force was working against the orphanage. Amalia did not expect that the person she was looking for was actually Revena. Revena showed no emotion when hearing Amalia's request for help. However, when Amalia said she planned to use Penance's loudspeaker to summon all mutants in the city, Revena became frightened. If people with special powers united, her power might be weakened. The loudspeaker plan went exactly as planned, but on the way, Amalia was attacked and pushed into the river. The attacker was also a person with a special power. He was sent by Beggy, the leader of the gang. His ability was to float on water, and with his large body, he could easily overpower Amalia, so she dove underwater. Taking advantage of the moment when he was not paying attention, she used an iron chain to tie his neck. Escaping from the attack, Amalia quickly arrived at the broadcasting site. At that moment, the equipment had already been set up. Mary was also ready to sing. When her voice echoed, countless people with special powers in the city were called. Ordinary people could not see it. Just as everyone was rejoicing, a bullet suddenly pierced through Mary's body, followed by the second and then the third. No one even had time to react. And so, Mary left this world. But before she sacrificed herself, Mary's song had a great effect. Many people with special powers heard her voice and joined the orphanage. Amalia was happy to see the orphanage becoming stronger. She wanted to find out clearly who was behind Mary's murder. While Amalia was thinking, she foresaw a scene of herself talking with Mason. Perhaps Mary's death was related to Mason, but since only people in the orphanage knew about the loudspeaker plan, she believed that the assassin who could kill Mary so precisely at that moment must be an insider in the orphanage. Mason did not yet know that he had drawn the orphanage's attention. He was busy dealing with the strike at the warehouse. The reason was that the workers believed transporting explosives was very dangerous, and they demanded a raise. Mason took out a bomb. He said that this was something used to protect the country, and only when the country developed better would their pockets become fuller. After saying that, he threw the bomb on the ground. The workers, terrified, quickly caught it. Mason told them to work obediently and promised that when the job was done, they would be paid fairly. After a while of Mason's persuasion, the workers returned to work. It could be seen that Mason was not someone easy to deal with. It would not be easy for Amalia to go against him. In the orphanage, Myrtle took out some drawings she had made, trying to express what she wanted to say. After some guessing, the girls finally understood that Myrtle meant her special ability was to understand Mary's singing. When Mary sang, she remembered the lyrics, and now they just needed to translate them to understand the meaning of the song. They began looking for people from different countries in the orphanage to help translate the lyrics. The search for the killer was also underway. Amalia made a list of suspects. Penance discovered that Revena and Augustus's names were also on the list. It seemed that Amalia did not completely trust them. Although Penance and Augustus did not part on good terms at the charity fair last time, Penance was the one who understood Augustus best. Therefore, the task of interrogating Augustus was assigned to Penance. When they met again, Augustus was very happy. He was no longer afraid of his sister's power. He honestly told Penance the reason he had been cold to her at the previous charity fair. He also revealed his own ability. Thus, Penance and Augustus reconciled with each other. But that did not mean Revena was no longer suspected. The fire girl was in charge of investigating the Beggy gang, but approaching the gang leader was not easy. She went to an old friend to find out about the situation. This person was also someone with a special ability. He could create metal mirrors to block physical attacks. He was currently in the Beggy gang, so he was the best source of information. According to the predicted vision, Amalia went to Mason's house to investigate. She believed that not long ago, the man with the the gun who had caused trouble with Moratti had been released. A person who committed such a serious crime could not be released for no reason, without anyone questioning it. Surely the one who released him must have been someone with great power. Besides, the purpose was to let him cause more chaos, thereby increasing the conflict between ordinary people and those with special abilities. Facing this accusation, Mason was not afraid at all. He said that special abilities were a terrible disease and the common enemy of all people. So no matter what methods he used to fight against those with special abilities, it was all for the safety of the country and its citizens. The more Amalia talked, the angrier she became. In the end, she had to return to the orphanage. There, she told everyone what had happened in their conversation. Those with special abilities were all furious. However, at that moment, they did not have enough strength to fight Mason, so they had to endure temporarily, but they were determined to make Mason stop underestimating them. It was said that Mason was repairing the warehouse recently. Inside it were many weapons, so they decided to blow it up as a warning to him. Meanwhile, at the police station, Mundy was called into the chief's office. He thought there was an order, but as soon as he entered, he was shocked, because the police had falsely accused Moratti of killing Mary. Moratti became furious. She kidnapped the chief and demanded that the police clear her name. Mundy tried to persuade Moratti to release the chief, but the chief had already been strangled until he fainted. Moratti escaped through the office window, and Mundy quickly chased after her. Moratti ran into a deserted alley, planning to finish Mundy there. But unexpectedly, Mundy was not an easy opponent, and in the end, Moratti was subdued by him. That night, Penance used her new invention to stun the guards at the warehouse. She planned to use the fire girl's ability to blow up the warehouse, but when they entered, Amalia discovered that it was full of stones. The warehouse address had been provided by a member of the orphanage named Susan, so she was the spy inside the orphanage. Knowing her identity was exposed, Susan no longer hid anything. She admitted that she was a spy planted by Mason, but insisted that she did not know Mary would be killed. Amalia could not understand why Susan had betrayed them when the orphanage had treated her so well. Susan said that she had always hated special abilities, because when her child was in her arms, the baby had died painfully because of her power. Therefore, destroying all special abilities in the world was her greatest wish. Amalia did not say anything more and pulled out her gun, intending to deal with the traitor. Because Amalia was good at martial arts, Susan could not get close enough to use her ability. She could only keep dodging the attacks. Seeing that Susan was exhausted, Amalia finally spared her life. In return, Susan had to tell her the real location of the weapon warehouse. The newly built weapon warehouse of Mason was blown up by Amalia. After finishing this task, they returned to the orphanage. There, they received the lyrics translated by Myrtle and the others. The lyrics were, "Lonely soldier, I have not left you. In the darkness, I am recovering. I hope you can find me." After knowing the lyrics, Amalia's eyes filled with tears. Only she knew that this was a song meant for her. Myrtle said that the song mainly conveyed information about a location to find out what was there. Penance invented a giant X-ray machine and used it to scan half of the city. Thanks to that, she found the place mentioned in the song. It was a giant sphere of light, the same thing that Revena had ordered her subordinates to modify. She was worried because the workers doing the modifications were becoming more and more unstable. If something stronger than the special power from the sphere appeared, humanity could face a disaster. The government decided to execute Moratti publicly. This made the people in the orphanage very dissatisfied. Because English law forbids public executions, this act by the government was no different from an intentional threat against those with special abilities. Moreover, the government issued a new law forcing all people with special abilities to wear badges to distinguish them from ordinary people. But this would definitely lead to discrimination against them. People with bad intentions could impersonate them to do evil. Knowing this, a female reporter named Clover went to the police station. She begged Mundy to let her interview Moratti once. Of course, Mundy refused, but Clover noticed a photo on the desk, and she remembered the case of the person bitten by rats at the subway construction site. Mundy said that if Clover could find the culprit, he would allow her to interview Moratti. Penance was busy with her new invention, this time a soil drilling machine. The drill, combined with the explosives of the fire girl, would open a path. This way, they could reach the energy sphere. Penance was eager to show Amalia her new invention, but the machine was not yet complete. Once it was turned on, it could not be turned off, so it made a large hole in the orphanage. However, this also proved that the machine worked. After the announcement of Moratti's public execution, that evening, many nooses were hung in front of the orphanage. It was clearly meant to provoke those with special abilities. This also showed the fear and hatred of the people toward them. If Moratti were truly executed publicly, these people would become even more extreme. The future of the orphanage became unstable. Therefore, Therefore, Penance suggested rescuing Moratti. Even though she deserved punishment, she should not be executed publicly. Amalia thought Moratti deserved to die, and that saving her would bring even if they managed to save her, the government could still use other methods to deal with people with special abilities. Right now, finding the new energy sphere was the most important. Penance and Amalia had a disagreement for the first time. Neither wanted to give in, but they respected each other, so they decided to split into two teams. Those who agreed with Amalia went with her to search for the energy sphere, while those who agreed with Penance went to rescue Moratti. Most people sided with Amalia. Even Augustus did not support Penance this time, but Penance still decided to lead her supporters to the place of Moratti's execution. On the execution day, the scene was crowded with people. Everyone wanted to witness Moratti's death. Moratti's subordinate also arrived. His ability is transformation, so he created an illusion, making the guards think he was their uncle, and the guard led him into the guard tent. Penance's group used Bobby's ability to turn the door into glass. Then, Penance broke the door and rushed into the execution site. Mirror went upstairs to deal with the sniper, and then they ran to the execution platform. But no one expected Moratti to jump down and end her own life. Penance's ability was seeing energy flows. She noticed something was wrong and paid attention to an abnormal current connected to the railing of the grandstand. When she realized it and tried to warn the people there, those in the front row were electrocuted and burned. Penance quickly cut off the electricity, but by then the scene had already turned chaotic. Everyone thought this was a warning from people with special abilities, and that they wanted to declare war on the ordinary people. Seeing the chaos, Bobby turned the door into glass. This allowed everyone to break the door and leave the chaotic place more easily. But the citizens only cared about escaping and trampled over Bobby. Her body was pierced by broken glass shards. Mundy noticed that Moratti's body had only one toe left. That was a feature of Moratti's subordinate. It turned out he had transformed into Moratti to switch places with her. The rescue mission failed. Meanwhile, the journalist Clover was walking on the street and suddenly removed her disguise. It turned out she was the real Moratti. The person Mundy had easily controlled was only her double. When Penance and the others returned to the orphanage, they saw Amalia waiting in the yard. She was ready to reveal a secret she had kept for a long time. In the future world, as the environment deteriorated severely, Earth's resources would run out, and the planet would no longer be able to support human life. In this time of scarcity, the survivors would continue to fight and kill each other. They would split into two factions, the Planetary Defense Alliance and the Earth Life Army. An alien race called the Glen would create a rift between the planets, and when they arrived on Earth, they would cause panic among humans. Only a few people would believe that the Glen had no ill intentions. As a result, humanity would be divided. The Life Army would attack the Glen, while the Planetary Defense Alliance would protect them. Because their numbers would be smaller, they would be defeated repeatedly. Although the Glen would have great power, they would not know how to use it in battle, and would be quickly destroyed by the Life Army. In the end, only a single Glen would try to survive. The Planetary Defense Alliance would be tasked with rescuing the Glen, but the place protecting the Glen would be discovered and attacked by the Life Army. When the Alliance reinforcements arrived, only a few of their soldiers and one prisoner from the Life Army would remain. The Glen would be locked in a cage, so it would not be harmed. The soldiers in the base would then begin communicating with the Glen. Those who communicated deeply with the Glen would gain energy and knowledge from it and would be called the Touched Ones. The appearance of the Touched Ones would make the Life Army, which already disliked the Glen, even more frustrated. However, the Life Army prisoner would successfully manipulate the mind of one Alliance member who would also believe the Glen was an evil creature. The presence of this traitor would prevent the Alliance from handling the situation quickly. Mundy, the main warrior of the team and the most experienced female fighter, would defeat both the enemy and the traitor. Through the Touched Ones, they would find out that the Glen truly wanted to return to their planet. They would seek help from humans, but by then, they would be disappointed. In the end, the Glen would transform into sparkling light particles carrying Mundy's consciousness. Then it would become a spaceship and travel to the Victorian era, when technology had not yet developed. At that time, Amalia had just been a bakery worker, and she had been forced to marry a rich but ugly man. Her life after marriage had been full of suffering. 2 miscarriages had weakened her health. Her husband had also died of heart disease, leaving only a sickly mother-in-law and a pile of debts. The pressure had become unbearable for Amalia. In the end, she had chosen to end her life by jumping into the river. At that moment, the Glen had released mysterious light particles. When Amalia had sunk to the bottom of the river, she had suddenly gained the power to foresee the future. She had immediately swum back to the surface. However, at that time, ending one's life was forbidden, so Amalia had been sent to a mental hospital. The manager there had treated patients by beating them. Amalia had gotten angry and had slapped the manager. As a result, she had been tied to a bed. When she had woken up, she had seen a girl standing beside her, and it was Moratti before she had become a demon. By then, Amalia had no longer been the weak bakery worker. In fact, she had been Mundy's successor as a warrior. It turned out that while receiving her powers, she had also received Mundy's consciousness, which had been why she could foresee the future. Later, she had quickly discovered that the doctor in the mental hospital had the power to heal wounds. Therefore, she had revealed all information about her own powers to him. This doctor had lived in the Victorian era, so he had been able to understand content about advanced technology. However, he had known he should follow Amalia. Only then would he not be seen as a monster because of his powers. Not long after, Dr. Tyr had also arrived at the mental hospital. He had tried to question Amalia about the spaceship. To hide that she was Mundy, Amalia had blamed everything on Moratti. In fact, Amalia had thought Moratti had talked nonsense all the time, so Dr. Tyr would not have gotten anything useful. But his presence had awakened the darkness inside Moratti. The feud between Amalia and Moratti had begun from that point. Revena had also appeared at this time. She had taken Amalia out of the mental hospital and had provided a shelter for people with special abilities. That was why the previous events had happened. When Amalia had heard Mary's song, especially the line, "Lonely Soldier," she had immediately understood that the Glen had still been in this world, waiting to be rescued. Back in the present, when Penance arrived at the execution site, she found the construction site where the energy orb was being mined and asked Glen why it had brought her to this era. At that moment, the ground began to shake violently. Amalia could not stand and fell backward. During this, countless memories and images of future predictions appeared in her mind, including an image of Revena's face. Revena told her not to think that only she could travel through time. When Amalia woke up, the workers at the energy orb site attacked her. Once again, Amalia used her superior power. Alone, she defeated the enemies and escaped danger. After escaping, she returned to the orphanage. She sat in the yard waiting for Penance to return. When she saw Penance return sadly, Amalia made an important decision. She decided to reveal her true identity and what would happen in the future world. Because the opponents they were about to face were not only greedy officials and ignorant people, but also terrifying time travelers. This is the end of the movie. Thank you all for watching. Goodbye, and see you again.